now have Dr. Lauren Bloomfield, who is an epidemiologist at the immunisation program at CDCD.
Thanks. Thanks, Peter. It's a very hard act to follow, so I'll do my best. And Joe's talked me up a bit this morning, so hopefully we think data linkage exciting. I certainly think it's very exciting. So just acknowledging that we're meeting on Wajak Noongar Budja this morning, and also to all the people on Zoom who are meeting on lots of different lands across the state, welcome, and it's great to have you here. So just by way of a quick overview, I have presented this before, so I won't labour the point, but just to note that during COVID, we did set up a COVID vaccine linked data repository within WA Health. So what this meant is we got our Australian Immunisation Register data as sort of the backbone of this data linkage system, and within that we have ongoing linkage that happens weekly. And to that we can link a variety of hospitalisation data sets. So we have our emergency presentations, our hospital morbidity system, which is our admissions data and our live admissions data, the death registry, and we also have some pathology data. So during COVID, obviously that was particularly COVID positive and negative tests that we got in. And these are all linked together by our data linkage branch. I cannot take any credit for the actual data linkage part of this. I do have to say, as part of this presentation, I am a mere epidemiologist. I get the information in and start to work with it and analyse it. So I'm happy to point you in the right direction, but just to say that we have a very long and proud history of data linkage in Western Australia. We've been doing it for a very long time, and credits to the data linkage branch who does excellent work to help us with this. So as I mentioned, this was developed during COVID. One big thing that we do want to take forward, it wasn't the funnest few years of our lives working with COVID, but we do want to take what we have learned forward and be able to use it and integrate it into our BAU. So we've dropped the COVID, the C from the front of this now. So this is just now our vaccination linked data repository. And we're starting to use this now on an ongoing basis for our safety, coverage and effectiveness work. So I'm going to talk a bit about the work that we're doing today. I'm not going to cover all of it, but I suppose just to give you a flavour, and very happy to talk to anyone about what we're doing in any of the breaks. So first, thinking about vaccine safety. So what we can do with this linked safety system. So WA is, I hope we all know, has a few different vaccine safety surveillance systems. So our big passive system being WAVS, which is our online portal. Providers and patients can all report adverse events in. Being a passive system, we don't elicit events. The system is just there and available and people report into it. To complement that, we also have our active surveillance systems, the big one being SmartVax, and we'll hear from Alan Lieb later on about that system, which is sort of an SMS-based system to elicit events. But between these, what we wanted to do was develop with our data linkage a system that actively looks for events within our hospital system. So what we're doing now is we're linking vaccinations to emergency department presentations, hospitalisations and mortality data on an ongoing basis. And we're particularly interested in doing this for newly introduced vaccines. So the example that I've given there, Shingrix, which we launched as part of our program on the 1st of November 2023, we're now running 2 vaccine safety surveillance programs on an ongoing basis to monitor the safety for those. So the first one is case finding, what we call case finding, which is every week we run the system to link all the vaccines to emergency department presentations and hospitalisations and look for particular adverse events of special interest. So for Shingrix at the moment, we are particularly focused on Guillain-Barré syndrome. We have the option to expand that out. So if there is another adverse event of special interest that comes to our attention or we think that we need to be looking for, we can add that to our case finding list. And we also look for ED presentations and hospitalisations that we think are potentially related to Shingrix vaccination. So we do that by looking for particular keywords within the presentation. So we do that on an ongoing basis. I guess I will comment on these systems. One of the things that we do have to balance is that sensitivity and specificity of the system. So we don't want to be pulling in every single event that's unrelated, because someone does have to go through all of these events. They do undergo clinical review, but we don't want to sort of make it so specific that we will miss a signal. So we're sort of finding the right balance there. The second system that we run is called rapid cycle analysis. So this is particularly designed for when you roll out a new vaccination program. And there are different statistical methods that we use to run this, and we do it every week to detect a signal. And what we're looking at particularly for this one is all-cause ED presentations. So anyone who went to hospital between 0 and 1 days after their vaccination, or 0 to 21 days. And we do that with a comparator group and try and look at if there may be potentially a signal that we need to investigate. So we've got these two running for Shingrix at the moment. With all the talk about RSV, if we are going to run an RSV program, that would be another one that we would be able to implement this one for as well. Moving on to vaccine effectiveness. So we were able to look at vaccine effectiveness during COVID, and that's particularly because we got all positive and negative tests reported to us. So one of the key underpinning things of our vaccine effectiveness is to be able to do what's called a test negative design. Positive results are obviously notifiable to the Department of Health by law. Negative results are not. So we've always had trouble in the past to run these kind of studies. You need quite large numbers for vaccine effectiveness. But in 2023, we were able to secure getting all positive and negative flu tests from PathWest to start running vaccine effectiveness studies. So what we were able to do for the first time in 2023 using linked data was to link the PathWest tests to our air immunisation data and to run vaccine effectiveness estimates. So we were able for the first time this year to produce our estimates, which WA Health were able to share with the WHO Collaborating Centre, and those are used to inform the vaccine formulation. So we feel like this is a really good demonstration of how we've been able to use our system to inform global vaccine development. So particularly for this year, we restricted the tests that we got from just PathWest only into ED. There is a few reasons for that, which I haven't gone into in the talk, but happy to speak to. I did a match study, all cases over the age of 6 months. Importantly, I think from a Department of Health perspective, we were able to produce mid-season estimates in June. So we did it this year as sort of a proof of concept for how early we could do them. So in future, we plan to do this every year going forward. I'll present some of the results in a minute, but what we would like to use these for is to proactively tell people as the vaccine is rolling out about how effective it is to hopefully increase our uptake, particularly in those high-risk groups. So I've got the slide up here. So I've got side by side because we've got the final estimates on one side and the interim estimates on the other side. That's really just to show you that they were very similar. So we're quite happy that we were able to produce quite good estimates really on in the season. Overall, we had pretty good vaccine effectiveness this year. So for all vaccines for all ages, around 70%. I recently went to an immunisation symposium, and the Commonwealth Department of Health produced the estimates which were very, very similar to ours, which is always quite reassuring when you've got a different group using different methods. So we are quite happy with what we've got. And as you can see there, we actually had very high effectiveness for children under the age of 18. This is the groups that the WHO Collaborating Centre used, but I will say we did narrow it down to children under 5 and it's almost identical. So very high effectiveness in that group, which would be useful to be able to tell parents if flu season is approaching or if cases are starting to go up, and we want to sort of give them some information about how effective the vaccine is. And as you can see this year, flu B higher than flu A in terms of the vaccine effectiveness. The last thing I wanted to talk about was just some of the work that we were doing for vaccine coverage, particularly on antenatal vaccinations. I will say we do have a report coming out about this. It's in the final stages of sort of editing and approval, so it will be available soon. I'm just going to present some of the key findings that we've got from that one. But just by way of sort of an overview, we know that antenatal vaccines present against hospitalisation and death during pregnancy and some adverse birth outcomes. And we're particularly focusing on vaccinations given during pregnancy, that protection that sort of Peter mentioned in that first 6 months of life. Antenatal vaccines are not specifically marked as being antenatal on air, which has always been a bit of an issue for us because we're trying to sort of quantify the coverage, and we really want those to be reliable. So in terms of what we have at the moment for vaccine coverage, the vaccinations are reported on the NOCA, the Notice of Case Attended. It's not particularly well documented, and we do know that. So that's just a screenshot from our website there. The boxes are highlighting the ones that we haven't, we don't know if people were vaccinated or not. So we do think we've got quite a lot of missing information, which then makes it hard for us to assess the coverage. So how we use the data linkage system, we got the morbidity data system and the Australian Immunisation Register, using a series of codes that indicate that a live birth occurred during that admission. We took the admissions for 2022, WA residents, and we assumed 39 weeks of gestation. And yes, I realise that that's not going to be the case for everybody, but it's a data linkage system, so we just have to work within the confines and the limitations of the data. And from this, we got 96% of births that were reported by the advisor notification system. So a pretty good overlap of coverage, we think. Then we linked the two together and we had a look at the differences of uptake for COVID, pertussis and influenza vaccine. So this is just some of the key findings that we had. So this is for the year 2022. We had 65% of people had at least 3 doses of COVID vaccine, either before or during pregnancy. So for that vaccine particularly, we looked at either before or during pregnancy. For pertussis vaccines, you can see there in 2022, the coverage during pregnancy was 73%. And for influenza vaccines given during pregnancy, it was 50%. I do just want to make a note on the influenza vaccines. We did look at restricting down because we do see a big dip in uptake of vaccines depending on when you gave birth. And that's probably due to the fact that people within a certain period of the year either don't know they're pregnant or wouldn't get vaccinated because the vaccines weren't available. So if we restrict the birth cohort down and remove those months, it goes up to about 60%. So still lower than pertussis, but a bit better than 50% in reality. So some of the key findings that we found by different areas. Overall, antenatal vaccination coverage is lower in Aboriginal women, and I've put up some of the results there. So this is across the whole state. Antenatal coverage is lower in women who required an interpreter at the time of delivery, and I think there's probably some reasons for that which are quite understandable, particularly if there's an interpreter and there's quite a lot of information to relay during an appointment. Having a vaccination consultation on top of that may be more difficult, so I think there's some things for us to look at there. And overall vaccination coverage lower in women who live in regional areas, but there are some variations by region. So that's not a blanket statement. So some are lower and some are a little bit higher. So I think what we've got from this is some key information that can help us start to inform some of our interventions. So we can start thinking about some of these groups, thinking about how we can improve our reporting on coverage and thinking about how we can address some of these discrepancies. So thank you very much. I'd like to acknowledge the data linkage team and again, particularly the data linkage branch. My email address is there, and as I mentioned, I'm very happy to take any questions or catch up with you during the breaks. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions for Lauren? Can I just ask people on Teams if they can hear? Do they have any questions? No. Oh, Peter, yes.
Fantastic talk and fabulous work. I'm really pleased that we've been able to keep this going post-COVID because I think it's a real innovation, something it's been a no-brainer that we should have this. Just in terms of the COVID vaccination in pregnant mums, was that any vaccine at any stage or was it within that 12-month period?
No, so for that one in particular, we looked at before or during pregnancy, I guess, because it's not really considered to be an antenatal vaccine. And we were basically looking at if anyone had received the vaccine at any point before or during their pregnancy.
So were you surprised at 50% coverage in WA?
So it wasn't recommended during, also this is for COVID vaccines or?
Yeah, for COVID vaccine.
Yeah, so it wasn't, the recommendation to have it or availability came in quite late. So I think we saw people holding off. I think that it was quite lower perhaps than if we ran it again now, perhaps the numbers would have been a bit higher, but it's becoming, I suppose, less relevant now that basically everyone has had a COVID vaccine. So if they're going into pregnancy, they probably have been vaccinated, but yeah, it was.
Just hold on a sec, otherwise people on Teams can't hear you.
When was the data run?
For the antenatal coverage. So that was for the period of 2022. So it was any of those births that occurred between the 1st of January and the 31st of December. And as I say, we have all this together in a report. So I'm happy to, well, you will get it through your various channels, but when it's published, it'll all be out there and there's a bit more detail in it as well.
Thank you.